Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to make this bolero top in the fastest way possible. Okay, so I'm starting with this pattern paper, and the first thing I went ahead to do was to mark my bust point at 8 inches. So after marking my bust point at 8 inches, I marked on both sides so I can get a straight line, so that everything will be accurate before I bite my mouth. Then I went ahead to mark my nipple point at 9.5 inches, okay? So I did this on both sides of the paper so that, by the time I draw my straight line, everything is accurate, like I said earlier. So I drew a straight line for the nipple point and my bust point as well. So this is what we have here, guys. Now the next thing I went ahead to do, that's my bust point, and the second line is my nipple point. Okay, that's my shoulder to nipple point. Okay, so now from the middle I went ahead to mark 4 inches for neck width. Okay, and I marked 3.5 inches for neck depth. Okay, so this is what we have here, guys. The next thing I went ahead to do, it's not really a circle, it's more like a rounded triangle, something like that. So after freestyling the neckline, I also went ahead to smoothen it out with my French curve. Then the next thing I went ahead to do was to mark my shoulder point at 8 inches. Okay, now I also went down to my bust point. I also mark 8 inches so that by the time I draw the straight line, everything is straight. Okay, so after doing that, I connected the 2 points together. This is what we have here, guys. Then the next thing I went ahead to do was I went down by 1/2 inch so that I can insert my shoulder slant, and I connected it with a straight line. So we have everything looking beautiful and pretty. Now the next thing I went ahead to do was to mark my bust. Okay, my bust, circumference of my bust divided by 4. I went ahead to mark it at that point. I also marked it at I also take circumference of my bust at that point as well. Okay, so after marking, the next thing I went ahead to do was to insert my armhole curve. Okay, after inserting the armhole curve, I also went out to smoothen it out. I also went ahead to smoothen it out with my French curve. You guys, I always do a mixture of freehand and with my tools as well. Then I connected my markings together. That's at my bust point and at my nipple point. Okay, so this is what we have going on here. So from that point, I marked 2 inches. And what I did here was I connected my 2-inch mark to that point. Okay, so I just used my French curve and I connected it. I just drew the shape I wanted the bolero to be looking like. Okay, if you want it straight, you can keep it straight. If you want it curvy, you can keep it curvy. You want to make sure you are blending out the hash lines, which is what I did there. So this is what we have for the front part of this bolero. You can see it's quick and easy to draft the pattern. Okay, so this is what we have here. The next thing I went ahead to do was to insert my sewing allowance, and I added 1 inch sewing allowance to this pattern. Okay, yeah, then I connected the markings together. I just linked everything so that everything will look all nice and put together. Yeah, so this is what we have going on here for the front pattern. The next thing I went ahead to do was to mark all the areas I'm going to cut out so I don't get confused. So you also want to do this when you're drafting yours so that you don't get confused and mark where you're not supposed to mark and cut and throw away where you're not supposed to throw away. Now for the back part, I went ahead to mark 1 inch for my zip allowance, and I connected it with a straight line. So that is my zip allowance. So after tagging it, the next thing I went ahead to do was I grabbed the front part of the pattern and I just placed it on the back part of the pattern. And with the help of my tracing wheel, I'm going to trace the front pattern on the back pattern. Okay, so after tracing the front pattern on the back pattern, you can see I traced the neckline, but I don't need that depth of neckline. So the next thing I went ahead to do now was to adjust the depth of the neckline that I want. And for the back, I'm working with 1 inch depth for neckline. The reason I drew the outline for the front is because I want to know the exact place where the width of my neckline is meant to be. Okay, so after drawing my neck depth at 1 inch, I just connected it, as you can see. Okay, so this is what we have here, guys. This is what the back pattern looks like. Now I want to get the length, what that measurement there is meant to be. So I just grabbed my front pattern, and from the top, I took the measurement there, which is 5.5 inches, about 5.6 inches thereabout, and I just transfer that measurement to the back. Okay, transfer the measurement to the back. I knew I could have just drawn a straight line, but I wanted everything to be precise. Okay, so this is what we have here, guys. So this is what the back pattern looks like. Okay, so after drafting the back pattern, this is what it looks like. The next thing I went ahead to do was to cut it out. So after cutting the front and back pattern, this is what we have here, guys. This is the front pattern and this is the back pattern. Now I went ahead to cut out the fabric and the lining. Forget the shape of the lining. I was just trying to manage the lining I have at home. Okay, so I went ahead to put my forcible interface to strengthen the fabric, because this is a bolero, so you need forcible interface. Okay, so I put forcible interface on the main piece and also on the lining piece. Okay, so to start sewing this bolero, the first thing I went ahead to do is I'm going to turn over the neckline with my lining. Okay, and I'm also going to turn over the hem, but there's a twist to that. There's a twist to that. Okay, so I went ahead to turn over to sew the lining to the main piece, and I used my scissors to cut it out. Okay, so I used my scissors. It's easier for me this way because I was not in the mood to start lining the facing together. So with the lining, okay, it's easier for me this way. The next thing I went ahead to do was I went ahead to top stitch the lining so that the neckline is not just puffing like puff. No, you need to top stitch it. Oh, sorry, you guys told me it's under stitch, so I under stitched it. So now the next thing I went ahead to do after under stitching the neckline is I went ahead to flip it over, as you can see. Okay, I made sure everything is well relaxed, and I'm just going to sew like that. Okay, just do what I'm doing. Don't go and test another method, it will end in tears. So after sewing, the next thing I went ahead to do was to cut out the fabric I did not need, the lining I didn't need, the excess, and you're going to slit the seam. Okay, so I went ahead to slit the seam, and I just went ahead to understitch to around the middle. And I also flipped to the other side and understitch around the middle as well, from the edge to the middle. So after that, I gave it a good press, and this is what we have here. So I also went ahead to top stitch the shoulder slant and my armhole. Now I did same thing for the back piece. Okay, I did same thing for the back piece. I top stitched the zip allowance area. I didn't turn it over. Now to start up with the back piece, I've gone ahead to highlight where my zip allowance is, and I just went ahead to join the back at the zip allowance. Okay, zip allowance, button allowance, whatever you want to call it, that is what it is. Now this is the back piece. So to get this going, the next thing I went ahead to do was to place the front piece on the back piece. I made sure it's well aligned, and the next thing I went ahead to do was to join the shoulder. Okay, you're going to join the shoulder and the side. So I went ahead to join the shoulders. I also went ahead to join the side. This bolero is already coming together. At this point, I was getting very excited. Okay, so after joining the front and the back part together, you can see it's already looking beautiful. Now to make this thing go from 0 to 100, we are going to draft the pattern for the sleeve. So you're just going to grab a piece of pattern paper and you're going to draw a straight line in the middle. Then I realized that this pattern paper was not going to be enough, so I just attached another one and I gummed it. So now I drew a line. Just draw a line in the middle of the pattern paper. Make sure you have enough. Then you also want to draw a starting line. Okay, so you want to draw a starting line, which is what I did there. Now the next thing I went ahead to do is from the starting line, I went ahead to mark 5 inches. Now that 5-inch mark is where I'm going to insert the circumference of my upper arm or bicep, whatever you call it. Okay, so after marking 5 inches there, and I drew a straight line, The next thing I went ahead to do is from that starting line, I marked 3 inches. Okay, I marked 3 inches. After marking 3 inches, do you guys know that slope we draw when you're trying to, from there, before I confuse you guys, so from that point that you guys can see, I went ahead to mark the circumference of my upper arm divided by 2. Okay, then I went ahead to connect this like a slope. Do you guys know that slope we do when we are drafting our basic sleeve? Yeah, this is what I did here. As you can see, I've inserted the slope there. I connected it to the circumference of my upper arm divided by 2. At the hem, I took the circumference of my sleeve there divided by 2, and I just connected it together. So if it's a long sleeve, you take it at the hem, the circumference at the hem, the circumference of your wrist at the hem. If it's short sleeve, circumference of your elbow thereabout. Now at the top, I just went ahead to freehand and draw this shape you are seeing, because you know the sleeve looks like an exaggerated sleeve going on there. So at that point, I extended it by 2 inches, and I just continue to draw this shape. I just see you want to eyeball it and get the shape you want. Okay, so this is what we have going on here. You can see it looks like a pero mango. Crazy mango. Oh God. I'm calling it my very Igbo accent. Okay, if you know the mango I'm talking about, let me know in the comment section. Now I marked 2.5 inches because I want to slash and spread this particular sleeve. So I marked 2.5 inches on both on 2 points, and I just drew a straight line. And after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to tag it. Okay, I numbered it number 1, number 2, number 3 in case it falls apart, so I'll know which is which. Okay, so after doing that, I went ahead to cut. This is what we have going on here. Now the next thing I went ahead to do, I'm just showing you guys the different compartments or the different pieces before I speak English that I don't know. Okay, I went ahead to cut it because we are going to slash and spread. Then I grabbed another pattern paper. This is why you should keep your pattern paper scraps. You need them for this type of things. Okay, and I grabbed my gum. So for the first piece, I just stretched it out and I used my gum to hold it in place. Then I used my tape and I marked 2 inches. Okay, after marking 2 inches, I just made sure it aligned with it. The second part aligned with the 2-inch mark, and I used my gum and I held it in place. After doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was I made a 2-inch gap again, and I'm just going to align my third piece to that point. I used my water gum. Did I say hemming gum before? Oh, remember and brethren, is water gum. Then I just used my hemming gum to hold the rest part of the pattern in place. Now to cut it, before I went ahead to cut it, I just went ahead to fold it. You might not fold it, you can decide not to fold it, but me, I wanted to fold it because I do not want to make mistake. So after folding it, I just went ahead to cut the excess pattern paper that I did not need and you will not need as well. I went ahead to cut it out. Okay, because people come and ask me, why am I cutting it out? Because it's not needed. It is not needed. Okay. So after cutting it out, you really want to take your time so you don't mess with the shape of the sleeve. This is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, people of the world. The gum had not really dried, but I was determined to film this tutorial to the last for you guys. Okay, so after cutting it out, this is what we have here, guys. Now the next thing I went ahead to do, I'm just showing you what it looks like so you will have a full view. And then I grabbed my fabric and I folded into 2. And I also went ahead to fold it into 4. Okay, so this is a fold of I folded into 4, just know that. Then I placed the pattern paper on the fabric, and I am just trying to draw a slope kind of to connect the points together, so I don't have to. I'll still take out this excess when I'm joining the sleeve. So just look at what I'm doing to make life easier for you. It's not like I cannot cut it exactly. I can, but it will give me a lot of issues. So I just drew a slope, okay, so that I can easily fit in well with the armhole. Then I went ahead to attach my forcible interface, and at that curved point I went ahead to add my wadding. Okay, I added wadding to the main piece. To the lining piece, I added only forcible interface. So to start sewing this, I just placed 2 sides together and I'm just going to join it at those points I showed you. And I did same thing, and I'm going to do same thing for the lining piece. So I took it over to my sewing machine. From that point, I marked 2 inches So from that 2-inch point backwards, I'm going to join the sleeve. Okay, so which is what I did here. I joined the main piece and I went ahead to slash the seam so that it will be well relaxed by the time I want to turn it over. Okay, I also did same thing for the lining piece. Now for this sleeve, to kickstart it, oh, we've already kickstarted. Okay, to keep it going, yes, to keep the sleeve going, you're going to place the right side of the main piece and the lining together, and you're just going to join. So which is what I did here. I placed the right side of the lining and the main piece together, and I just joined it. After joining, I went ahead to understitch so that everything will not be puffing like puff puff, like I've said a million times in this video. So this is what we have going on here, guys. I've turned the sleeve over with the lining. You can see how neat and precise everything looks. Now the next thing I went ahead to do is I went ahead to pleat. You see that 2 inches, 2 inches we added. I went ahead to pleat it. Okay, I went ahead to pleat it to give me the puff and the lift that I want for this sleeve. Okay, so after pleating it, you are going to do this one with your hand. Okay, so I went ahead to pleat it and I secured it with my pins. I also gave it a good press and I pleated around the sleeve as well, so that, you know, just to give it an exaggerated look. So I went ahead to join the side of the sleeve. Okay, so after joining the side of the sleeve, I secured it to the bolero, and I'm just going to join the sleeve to the bolero. Okay, it's that simple, it is that easy. So after joining the sleeve to the bolero, I added press button to the back. Okay, you can add your normal button, you can add hook and eye, whatever you want to add, but me, I added press button and it came out beautiful for me. You want to make sure you layer it properly and it is well put together. And guys, this is the easiest way, the simplest way, and the fastest way to sew this bolero with exaggerated sleeves. Okay, do make sure you come back for more videos. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe. If you're watching for Facebook, make sure you follow, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.